December 20th, 1943. A crippled American bomber drifts helplessly over Nazi Germany. 10 young men inside are moments from death, their aircraft torn to pieces by enemy fire. Then, out of the clouds, a German fighter appears. Its cannons are locked. The bomber's fate seems sealed, but instead of pulling the trigger, the German pilot makes a choice that defies war itself. This is the unbelievable true story of two enemies who met for 10 minutes in the sky and became brothers for life. The B-17 Flying Fortress, codenamed Ye Olde Pub, limped across northern Germany that winter morning. Its nose was shattered, engines coughing. Blood and smoke filled the freezing air inside the fuselage. Lieutenant Charlie Brown, a 21-year-old pilot from West Virginia, gripped the controls. His crew, most of them wounded, fought to keep the bomber in the air. They had just bombed a factory in Bremen, and paid dearly for it. Flak had shredded the tail section. Enemy fighters tore gaping holes in the wings. One gunner was dead, another unconscious. Charlie's hands shook, the controls stiff with ice and blood. The bomber wasn't flying. It was surviving. Then, out of nowhere, another shape emerged through the smoke. A Messerschmitt Bf 109, the deadliest fighter in the German Luftwaffe. Its guns were already aimed directly at them. Inside that fighter sat Franz Stigler, a seasoned Luftwaffe ace. He had already downed dozens of enemy planes. But as he approached the battered American bomber, something stopped him cold. Through the shattered metal of the fuselage, Franz could see the faces of the men inside, wounded, bleeding, some trying to help their comrades. They weren't enemies anymore. They were human beings. In that moment, Franz remembered his commanding officer's words, spoken long before the mission. "If I ever see or hear of you shooting at a man in a parachute, I'll shoot you myself." To Franz, this was no different. These men were defenseless. Shooting them would be murder. So instead of finishing them off, he made a decision that could cost him his life. He eased his finger off the trigger. He pulled alongside the B-17, wingtip to wingtip, and locked eyes with Charlie Brown through the cockpit glass. Imagine the sight. A German fighter flying in formation with a dying American bomber. Over Nazi territory, Charlie was stunned. His crew yelled, "He's toying with us!" expecting the worst. But then the German pilot gestured with his hands, motioning for them to turn toward Sweden, where they'd be safe. Charlie didn't understand. His only thought was home, England. Franz realized they wouldn't change course. So he made a new choice. He flew beside them, shielding them from German anti-aircraft batteries below. Enemy gunners on the ground saw the 109 and assumed it was escorting a friendly bomber, so they held fire. For several long minutes, the two aircraft soared side by side over hostile territory, bound by nothing but humanity. When they finally reached the North Sea, Franz knew it was time. He looked at Charlie one last time, raised his hand, and gave a slow, respectful salute. Then he turned his fighter and disappeared into the clouds. Charlie and his crew somehow made it back to England. Ye Olde Pub crash-landed at RAF Seething, barely holding together. Ground crews couldn't believe it had flown at all. During debriefing, Charlie told his superiors the truth. A German pilot had spared them, and even escorted them to safety. The response was immediate and chilling. "Never speak of this again," they said. "If word gets out that German pilots can show mercy, it could spread dangerous sympathy." So the event was buried. Charlie finished his missions, came home, and lived a quiet life. But the memory, that moment of mercy, never left him. At night, he'd wake in cold sweats. His daughter remembered the nightmares, the screams, the silence afterward. He could never forget the German pilot who had looked into his eyes and spared his life. Meanwhile, Franz Stigler also kept silent. What he'd done, sparing an enemy aircraft, was treason. Had anyone in the Luftwaffe discovered it, he would have faced execution by firing squad. After the war, Franz fled the ruins of Germany. He built a new life in Canada, married, worked hard, tried to move on. But deep inside, he too carried that day with him. He would later say that after seeing Ye Olde pub in that state, he lost his appetite for the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest honor for bravery. That day, he realized honor wasn't about killing. It was about saving what could be saved. More than 40 years passed. It was 1986, at a reunion called Gathering of the Eagles. Now 64, Colonel Charlie Brown, retired Air Force, was asked if he had any memorable missions from the war. He paused. Then finally, he told the story. The bomber. The German fighter. The salute. The audience was stunned. People urged him to find the pilot who spared him. For the first time in 43 years, Charlie decided he would. He wrote to archives, contacted the U.S. Air Force, the West German military, and the Luftwaffe. He searched through piles of records, wrote hundreds of letters. Every lead turned cold. Years went by. The trail was dead. But Charlie couldn't let it go. In 1989, he wrote a detailed letter describing the encounter. Date, time, location, even the markings on the German plane, and sent it to a combat pilot veterans newsletter. Then, he waited. Meanwhile, in Vancouver, Canada, a 74-year-old man opened his mail. Franz Stigler read the newsletter and froze. The date matched. The place matched. The story matched. After 47 years, he finally knew they had survived. He sat down and wrote 4 simple words. I was the one. When Charlie Brown opened that envelope in Miami on January 18, 1990, he wept. They spoke by phone soon after. Franz described his fighter, the gestures, the salute. Every detail matched. Charlie finally had his answer. And Franz finally knew his mercy had not been in vain. 6 months later, they met in person, in Seattle. As Franz stepped from the car, Charlie ran toward him. They embraced like family, both men crying. Franz whispered, I love you, Charlie. For hours they talked. 2 old soldiers, sharing stories from opposite sides of the same war. Charlie introduced Franz to his surviving crew. Franz met their children and grandchildren, lives that existed because of his choice that winter morning in 1943. It was the healing both men needed. Charlie's nightmares stopped. Franz said it was the only good thing that ever came out of the war for him. From that day on, they were inseparable. They called each other every week. They traveled across America together, telling their story at air shows and schools. Franz once gave Charlie a book. Inside, he wrote, In 1940, I lost my only brother as a night fighter. Thanks, Charlie. Your brother, Franz. But not everyone understood. Some in Germany called Franz a traitor. Some in Canada called him a Nazi. Franz just smiled. They'll never understand, he said. Charlie is my brother. Their friendship lasted 18 years. On March 22, 2008, Franz Stigler passed away in Vancouver at 92. 8 months later, Charlie Brown followed. At 86, 2 men buried thousands of miles apart, but forever connected by one act of mercy, a decision made in the skies above Germany. Their story would later be told in the best-selling book, A Higher Call, inspiring millions around the world. But for Charlie and Franz, it was never about fame. It was about something far greater. In a world torn apart by war, one German pilot chose compassion over duty. He looked beyond the uniform, beyond the hatred, and saw a human being, and because of that, 10 men lived. 2 enemies became brothers, and the world was reminded, even in the darkest times, humanity can still shine through, because sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is not to fight, but to forgive.